Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. My name is Sean Benson, and I'm one of your hosts. We're so happy to be here tonight with Sensei Mike Wall. He's a friend of the program, he's a returning guest, and I'm so excited about this. We're going to introduce our topic in a little bit and introduce him. But the one thing that's been happening with our show as we get into close to 200 episodes is when we have return guests, we dig into a specific topic a little bit, and it really lets us crack open the texture of what we're doing here. So I'm super excited for our conversation tonight. Before we get to that, I want to introduce Sensei Nicholas Suino. Now, aside from being a literal master of the martial arts, in Iaido and Jiu Jitsu and Judo, we've actually got an event coming up that was pioneered not long ago at your club, which is a stand-up, takedown, and ground game event that you and Sensei Dauphin came up with. And we're doing that on the 18th here. I don't even think I'm advertising this because I think it's sold out, right? Um, okay, well,
Close.
if you're dying to get in, but I think it's such an important part of what we're doing as martial artists, especially all the information we're getting from this show, which is looking at the way these arts ranges, blend and how we can use all our expertise to create, distance to the ground type of thing. So we're super excited about it. And I said this on a past show, but I have a black belt student, Jesse, who is in New York and he was looking around at martial arts when he landed there. And after doing your seminar, Sensei Suino, he said, I don't want to do anything but what we're doing. I don't want to do anything but what our clubs are doing. So that event you two created is epic, and I can't wait to do it. I wasn't at the first one, but I just want to say, thanks for moving the ball forward into 2025 with something that has its classical roots, but is intensely relevant to today. So, how you doing tonight, Sensei Suino?
Doing great, man. Other than freezing, it's winter's finally here. Doing great. Practical fighting camp. Yep, coming up in week and a half. Super excited about it. As you alluded to, we do striking, we do takedowns, and we do groundwork. But the whole point for me of the takedowns and the groundwork is to escape, right? This is a self-defense scenario. You don't want to be rolling around on the ground with folks in a self-defense setting. If you can dominate them on the ground enough to create space, get out of there, live to fight another day. That's really the idea. But man, it was so well received at JMAC, and our ticket sales so far have been just great. So really looking forward to it. Sensei Wall, one of these days we'll do it again, either when you're on this side of the ocean, or we'll come over there and put one on where you are. I can't wait to do that. But yeah, man, Sean, thanks for the intro. Super looking forward to that. I can't wait.
What do you want
Okay.
to say about Sensei Dauphin tonight?
What do I want to say about Sensei Dauphin?
Yes.
Man, what a man that guy would be if he only knew some martial arts. What do I want to say? Listen, he's part of the co-conspiracy of this, all these events we've been doing over the last few years. I really think this show was really, it came about because of his ideas during COVID, and we've rocked it out ever since. Um, uh, uh, One thing that's been going on for the last year or so is Sensei Dauphin has just happened to have some really incredible kids, and one of them, Sydney Dauphin, is down here in Ann Arbor almost every 2 weeks lately for reasons. And so it's just been great because she's like the carbon copy female clone of Sensei Dauphin. She's better to look at, she's nicer to talk to, but she's a great martial artist, and we're just blessed that he made her and he made this thing happen too. So it's all good.
Sensei Dauphin, do you want to say a little something about Hanchi Legacy and then our guest?
Of course I do. None of this stuff happens without Hanchi Legacy, of course. Not me, not Sensei Suino. We don't know Sensei Wall. We don't know you, Sean. I don't have these lovely kids that Sensei Suino's talking about, because Sensei Legacy is responsible for starting all of that stuff. And interestingly, he always preaches the basics. And it occurred to me that through all things come the basics. When I think back about all the things I gained from learning my basics from Sensei Legacy, some of it is stuff that you would not expect, like meeting a person like Sensei Wall, right? That's because I went to the dojo repeatedly and did my basics with Sensei Legacy. He taught me those basics. There's new things coming from learning my basics. The fighting camp, Sensei Legacy teaches the striking portion of that. Sensei Suino teaches the takedown and ground portion of that. I bounce around between them, get them coffee, and let them hit me and slam me on the ground. That's my role in that camp. And I love Sensei Legacy with all of my heart, and I'm extremely grateful for everything he's done, and I'll be loyal to him till the day I die or until we meet each other in the next life, which if we can, I know we will. If I can meet anybody in the next life, I know I'm going to meet him. Um, I also want to mention, Sean, that in addition to the practical fighting camp, there's a youth component to that this time. And that's Robert and Sydney and Richard Monroe from JMAC are going to be teaching that for 2 hours for youth, because a lot of young people wanted to come to that camp, and it's just not appropriate to that for them to be doing that 5-hour camp with big people. So we added a component with other instructors for them to be able to participate as well. And I also want to mention that we have the Matsumoto Challenge, our 45+ year karate tournament that will be coming up in February, and everything is rocking along awesome for that. And that's another thing that Sensei Legacy started that I've just glommed onto and continue to help them with. But the person I'm excited to introduce tonight is our good friend, Sensei Mike Wall. I was going to call you Bob Wall for a second because we just got to screw up everybody's names. But I looked at you and I was like, there's no way he was in Enter the Dragon. He was not in Enter the Dragon. So Sensei Wall started his martial arts in 1977. He lives and trains in Helsingborg, Sweden. If you don't know that, it's he is very gracious. It's 2:38 tomorrow there, and so if you see him drinking coffee, we'll cut him some slack. He's a 7th Dan in Jiu Jitsu and a black belt in BJJ. He's the owner of Fenix Martial Arts Academy. He's a physical education teacher for more than 20 years. Sensei Wall's BJJ, MMA, Jiu Jitsu, and Kobudo practitioner at Fenix Kampsport, Fenix Martial Arts Center. He's passionate about seeing other people grow. And as such, he's worked as a sports instructor for, as I said, 20 years. He has a lot of accomplishments. In 2018, he won a gold medal in his division in the BJJ European Championships. They were held in Portugal. Most prestigious and largest BJJ tournament held in Europe. That's one of the main ones. As well, earlier, when I say this year, a few years ago, because I'm reading notes from the last time we were here, he was awarded the Gold Medal of Merit by the Skåne Budo and Martial Arts Associations for his commitment in Budo and martial arts. He's also really passionate about working with people who have physical and mental disabilities. You can check a lot of these things out. He does a lot of service with his martial arts. And then I always like to provide a few little comments on my part. We met Sensei Wall through Hunchitarian. When we did the World Martial Arts Live sessions during the pandemic, I just remember watching his session, which in our time, the roles were reversed because I was up at like 2 o'clock in the morning doing your session in my dojo, Sensei Wall. And I just remember thinking, like, what a great teacher you are, how good your movement was. You were teaching striking that day, and your striking is just so good. It was amazing to see. Since then, I've had the chance to be with you live and in person, which is equally as impressive or more so. If you want to know what a person's good at, watch how they spend their time. He spends all of his time in the dojo doing martial arts, so no surprise, he's very good at them. For the last, I guess it's going on 20 years now, he's been the chairman of the PA committee in the Swedish Budo and Martial Arts Association, where he works to provide a venue for disabled people to train martial arts at both a local and national level. I can't commend you enough for that. We all will complain when we get a student who has like ADD and we don't want to like work with them too much. And you're working with people that, and working well with them and helping them that have much more serious ailments. Another thing I'm going to say about Sensei Wall that I know now, this guy's a fucking great cook. We go back and forth all the time about his food. He sends me pictures of his food. And the first thing I think when I see it is, how can I get a plane ticket and get my ass to Sweden to eat some of that? Right. So, but when we come, we're not eating that fish shit that we're not eating that fish shit that Johan showed us. He showed us this video of some Americans trying to eat some type of Swedish fish in his backyard, and they were all puking just from the smell. We've seen each other at Capital Conquest a number of times, and a memorable thing for me was in the lobby where we call that lobby Event Horizon. And you and I saw each other. I think you were the first person I bumped into a few years ago, and he crushed me with a hug that almost like crippled me because, as we say, he's big and strong and good at martial arts, but it was a great hug. At that seminar in particular, both Sensei Suino and Robert Chalumsky, one of my students, came back singing the praises of your BJJ seminar and how good it was and how realistic it was. Um, at that same seminar, you and I had the chance to be together and do some Iaido. And I remember after saying to you, I think you've done this before. And you said, maybe once or twice, right? You were a little too handy with the boken to not have ever picked one up before. And the last thing I want to say is, since World Martial Arts Live, I'm really happy that we've actually become not acquaintances. We're real friends. Sensei Wall is a real friend to the people on this call. If he came to Canada or the United States and he needed something, we'd be helping him. And I know if any of us showed up in Sweden, he'd be helping us out too. Well, maybe not you, Benson, but the rest of us. So
There's work to do.
that's my introduction for Sensei Wall. And thank you so much, Sensei, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to throw it to you, Sensei Wall. We've got this great topic we want to crack open. So why don't you introduce it and start us off in the direction you want to chat?
Yeah, please. Thank you so much for all the kind words. Just a little bit adjustment. I'm an 8th Dan black belt now since a couple of years ago, and second black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But that's only a stripe here and there, so it doesn't matter actually. But to put the record straight. When you contact me again, it was a great honor the first time to be on the show and to be welcome back, which I normally don't when I be somewhere. Joke. I would like to put. Let's talk about how we change the training over time and what make us change the training over time. And I have been doing some small research regarding the differences and the similarities between Canada and Sweden, but we come to that. So, so that is what we're going to talk about this morning or evening.
I love it. And by the way, Sensei fan, for everybody watching, just put up in the chat button at the bottom. He highlighted that so you can ask your questions or comments on the side, because this isn't just us chatting. We want you to be a part of it. And as you hear something that stimulates you, chip in. And we're really glad you're here with us tonight in real time. And if you watch us later, throw some stuff in the comments and we'll circle back later and we'll answer those questions. Why don't we start with you, Sensei Suino? So why don't you talk to us a bit about how your training has changed over time? Because I know later we're going to get into how training in general has, but how has your training changed?
Well, I hate to even acknowledge this out loud, but I'm not 20 anymore. And yeah, isn't it crazy? You wouldn't know by looking at me. In order to recover, I have to train fewer hours. I think I'm training smarter. I hope so. More thoughtfully, trying to do more with technique and less with muscle. I'm seeing a lot more connections between Iaido, between Judo, between Karate, between BJJ, between Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. I'm seeing a lot more connections. To me, it looks like a big ball of string, and I pull one out and follow it along, and it goes from one to the other, and I see the relationships and the techniques. So, you know, I'm not ready to start training like an old man, but I'm definitely training a little smarter than I was 20, 30 years ago.
Well, so we got time to chat about this tonight. So for somebody who's newer watching and sees everything as separate, what do you see as some of the commonalities? What are some of those links you're making? And where are people correctly separating it and where are they incorrectly separating arts?
I'll give you 2 examples of connectedness. One is tactical or physical, and one is mental. You use your hips in every martial art to generate movement, to generate power. And the better you get at using your hips and taking the movement of the hips and transmitting it into your punch or into your turn or into your throw, the more effective and the more efficient you are. So every martial art has hips in it. The better you get at hips, the better you get at those martial arts. Here's another one I've been thinking about a lot lately. The better I am at being present in the moment and being intentional and aware, like think physical balance, but think for your head. Staying present and balanced no matter what I do. Even if I'm upside down in BJJ, right? Even if I'm getting punched, even if I'm setting up a throw, if I maintain my physical and mental balance, that's a more productive, conscious, effective way to train. And that's true in every martial art. So that's two examples.
That's awesome. Hanshi Legacy, we often finish with you, but I saw you really nodding along with Sensei Suino there. So let's start with how your training has changed over time, or you can start with the idea of arts having commonalities, whatever you want to go with this.
Well, at the very beginning, martial arts themselves, I joined in martial arts to learn my fighting. They were scattered themselves, you know, people were doing parts of this, parts of that, and there wasn't any real direction. We were just sort of going sideways. And how we were getting better is just by getting faster, by doing the same things, but more and more. So it wasn't really growing forward. It was sort of just growing again sideways, you know. And then the reason I nodded is because Sensei Suino mentioned that facing like when you go into a karate club, you never think of a guy standing there facing you who wants to take your life. So in kata and in the mental aspect and of fighting, it came along in the martial arts for me and made a very, very big change. Just imagine like a police officer not contemplating having to face some young 18-year-old person with a gun and he's crazed on drugs and he's going to harm somebody, that he has to actually shoot him or be shot himself. That's something a little bit heavier that most persons who take martial arts never consider. Because they're doing sport karate, or there's nothing wrong with sport karate, but I'm just saying that that is not your goal, to be able to defend themselves and face something that could take your life. So when you join a classical martial art, you have the knowledge of people from Matsumura Itosu moving on forward to my sensei, and then myself, then passing it all that, putting my bit in and passing it on to the future martial artists. So I think it's changed in that way. We finally made a connection to all the great minds of the past so that we can have their knowledge and use it for ourselves, add what we can, and pass it on to someone else.
Thanks.
So kata is something that some schools consider not worthwhile in martial arts. They are so wrong. That's where you can get to prepare your mind for killing someone just by mentally, every time when you're doing your kata, facing that opponent in the kata and doing your worst to them.
Thanks, Hanshi. Sensei No-Fan, what about you? How's your training changed over time?
Well, I'm going to try to keep it as short as I can because I'm interested to see and hear what Sensei Wall has to say. I would simply say that, Sean, in the beginning when I started training, it was very external, right? It was very much about, like, even before I was doing karate, when I was lifting weights, it was like, I'm looking at pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, I want to look like that. So then I'm doing the things that I think I need to do to be able to get my muscles bigger. And I was not wasting my time, but I wasn't training as broadly enough as I should. When I came to karate, same thing. It's an external thing. I want to fight, and I want people to look at me and say, that guy's a fighter, right? Typical 18 to 20 something year old. So I don't think in the beginning, I don't think I trained with enough purpose that was internal, if I can say it that way. And now, oddly, the more I train for internal purposes, the more the external things that I want seem to appear for me. So, you know, like doing all the exercise I do, doing karate as much as I do, going to BJJ, doing all the Iaido, when I go inside and do it for myself for reasons of health and better mental clarity and thinking about self-defense and longevity, the more I do it that way, the more my outside starts to change, and the way that I react to the outside changes a lot. So I guess that's what I would say has changed in the beginning. And I guess in the end, I just maybe call that maturity. I'm a 50-something-year-old man now instead of a teenager doing martial arts. So
Right on. I don't want to spend much time on it, but when I started, it was all how. And then lately it's more just a feel, like a kinesthetic, like whether it's range and sparring or feel of what Sensei Suino talked about, where's my hips? And it's not super conscious. That how was all, what am I trying to do? How do I do it? And there was so much gap between the thought and the execution, and it's becoming, and has been for a sec, a little more reactive, and that feels nice. What about you, Sensei Wall? Crack this wide open for us.
Well, I think it's about loyalty. Loyalty to myself, loyalty to my club, loyalty to my sensei, and loyalty to my art. Because what's happened, I think that hopefully we all get older, and every year we put another year on, but still we have students coming to our schools. And if I look at as we talk about the last time I was here, we talk about the martial arts development over the world, and particularly in Sweden, where we have the boxing, we have the wrestling back in the days. Now the young people will have to go to do mixed martial arts, but when I looking back, of course my techniques were different, but I tried to create a martial arts map for my students and a martial arts map for me. And so I think that hopefully the training methods have been changed over time, because back in the days, my sensei stand there with a bamboo stick, and if I didn't do enough push-ups, he hit me in the back with that. And I can't do that anymore, of course, because the student will leave me the same day. But so this is what interesting me is that can we change the way of training without leaving the main road for our own art? It's so I have changed a lot of things, because as you mentioned before, I have a lot of students coming to my dojo that have mental disabilities, or they only have one leg, or they have autism, or letter combinations of all kinds. And there I have to change my methods, of course, keep it more simple. The puzzle have bigger pieces. So when I met you guys, you are most of you are practicing karate or iaido or the Japanese arts, right? And if I should try to fill my dojo with new students all the time, which we all have to do I have to change my way so I can attract the new student to my school? Or I am a hard-necked bastard. I just keep doing the same thing that I've always done. If you don't like it, you go somewhere else. That is the way that I think that we should see it.
Sensei Suino, I see you nodding along with that. This is I actually have a real specific question about this after, but when he said, like, do you change or do you stay hard-necked, hard-nosed? What do you think about that?
Well, isn't that a little bit different in one way, right? There's a difference between how wide the front door is, right, when you let people in, and what their experience is around the edges, and what they experience when they're on the mat. You can still be a hard training, core values kind of martial arts instructor while still being friendly off the mat, being welcoming, structuring the program so a lot of people can get in, right? So I don't know, Sean, I sort of feel like there's two things going on here. One is training, and one is dojo atmospherics, right? Bringing people in, etc.
So I like that because you and I have talked about that style of teaching. You know, if you're not inherently, like I'm not, an edgy hard ass, then it would be weird to put that on. But what about on the mats? How hard should that be? And how hard nosed and, challenging physically up to and including, it hurting should it be?
I think everybody has to come to their own decision. I've certainly gotten a lot kinder and gentler over time. Uh, uh, I like the idea of giving a lot of people the chance to try it out. And sometimes, I think we've all discovered this, you'll have students who maybe aren't very good at first. They're physically incapable of making it through a hard class. They struggle for a week, a month, 3 months, a year. Some of those people go on to be great martial artists. So if I can, I think I've done a good job of balancing this, although other people might have a different opinion. I think I've done a good job of balancing this, making it possible for those people to come in, to train, to get better, and have a shot at jumping over that obstacle. While I don't think I've compromised the top level too much. We have some world-class martial artists at JMEC, and I don't know if the number of them goes up or down when I do that, but I do
Right.
know that the dojo's a lot bigger. We have a lot more people in there, and we give more people the chance to succeed.
Right.
I'm looking forward to meeting this kinder, gentler Sensei Suino that I'm hearing about.
Well, let's pop to you, Sensei Dauphin, because I know we've talked about this privately a lot, but not off the mats, not necessarily the energy, but the actual physical. How hard should that be, and possibly even painful in something that is a roughing up type of art?
Okay, I got a bunch of thoughts on this. This one won't be super short. Well, I think that one, I have some pedagogy methods that have been fairly successful for me. One is that you're mean to the group and nice to the individual. So when I'm leading a group class, I'm like tenaciously like more, faster, harder, slow down, relax. Like I'm very demanding of what I'm looking for, and I'm unrelenting while that's happening. Depending on where you are in your journey, for the individual, I'll be the kinder, gentler sensei that I can be. But like, especially when it comes to kids, youth, people like that, I want them, because I guess basically what I mean is, to Sensei Wall's point, if I hit them with a shinai before I have a relationship with them and they don't trust me, then you might as well just bring them in the front door, open up the back door, and throw them back out there, because that's what's going to happen. But I like to think that the more I have a trusting relationship with them, the more direct I can be. Let's call it direct. And the more demanding I can be of them. Also because I know them more. I know their capabilities more. To answer your question specifically, in martial arts, I think there has to be, you have to get hurt, not injured, but you have to get hurt. You must get roughed up. You must get banged hands. You must get banged toes. You must get a black eye. You must, and I don't think that's discriminatory of age either. Like most of my young people have gotten fat lips and bloody noses, and there's ways to handle that to help them. Actually, as I'm thinking about it, since Suino was there one night once when it was me, I was fighting with a young guy named Ravana, and I think he was like 7 or 8 years old, and I was fighting him on my knees, and he came running in at me, and I popped him in the mouth, and he got a bloody lip. And he didn't know he got a bloody lip, but I knew he got a bloody lip. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh my God, Ravana, you're bleeding." And right away he put his hands on it and he saw the blood and you could see him start to well up. And I said, "Congratulations, brother." And then he kind of stopped, and I stopped the whole room from fighting. Everybody stopped. I said, "Hey, everybody, Ravana just got a bloody lip. He's in the bloody lip club." And the whole room was like, "Rah!" They all cheered for him. And then right away, that negative thing, not getting roughed up, he was so proud that he was in the bloody lip club. Right. So I think I think he experienced some pain, he experienced some fear, and he experienced that in a positive way.
Mm.
So that's where I take your question.
Love that. Hanshi Legacy, where do you go with this about how physically tough and her, I mean, you come back from the old school. What do you think it should be?
Well, at the very beginning, when you're a black belt, you're just building yourself. In the early years, you're building yourself. So you have to go into that stuff. You have to go in and get battered around a little bit. You're becoming that martial artist. And then after that, after you've become that, you can't teach it until you become that. Then I think in the later years, you understand some of the things that you didn't before, but you have to be able to, as a person walks in the door, every individual person, you have to, as a teacher, we're servants, so we have to be able to also understand where that person is coming from. And that you need to be able to guide them into even the rough parts of fighting, but at their own pace and in the best way possible. So,
And then, yep, sorry, Hanshi.
yeah. So, that's a tough job that we have to do because we're teaching a pretty deadly art. And you have to teach that. You have to learn how to wade children into it, older persons, a young guy who's tough, to try to contain that so no one else gets hurt. But again, like Randy says, once somebody gets hurt and not injured, then they have, first thing I tell them is, when you start fighting, expect to get hurt. That way they're mentally prepared. If you don't prepare them for that and they get hit, they go into like minor shock. So you have to be a good teacher, but you have to cover all the ground.
Thanks, Hanshi. And Sensei, well, you kind of introduced this topic, but I don't think we got as full an answer from you. So how tough do you think it should be? Because you mentioned the idea of the Shinai, and that's not really necessarily today's, but what do you think it should look like today?
I think it's all depends on the personality you are yourself. You have to be trustful, So if I'm a nice guy off the mat, I think I'm also a nice guy on the mat. But you can be hard. The training can be hard, of course. But back in the days, I started with jiu-jitsu in 1977. If I should go to another school just to try out, my sensei should throw me out the same second. But now it's more common that you all try other arts now. You try to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu parallel to your karate. It doesn't mean that you leave your karate, but it maybe makes your karate better. So what I meant was that I have an instructor meeting a couple of days ago, and there were 20 black belts that have been with me since the start nearly. And we asked ourselves, how come? Why are you still here? Well, we love you. Okay, thank you so much for that. But beside of that, it's that, well, we like the way that we are training. But first of all, we are building ourselves, but then we start to building a dojo, and then we start to building a brand, or we do something else. And I was sitting the other night and I was looking at the documentary of Hanshi Cesar Bukowski, the legendary karate master from Canada, and listened to his story and what he would like to do. And I think that I have I can do the same techniques today that I was doing back in the 1970s, but I can use modern equipment or modern way of taking my students from A to B. And I think that is not a bad thing, because the society is going in a parallel world outside the dojo. So for many people, that is a place where they can feel safe, even if they got the bloody lips. And there is a famous karate teacher in Stockholm. He has built a replica of a Okinawa dojo in the center of Stockholm. So people are going from the 2025, you know, the cars are going back and forth and the stress, and they open the door to this old dojo and they go down and it's a complete different world. So that is why he attracted people. Just some blocks away, there is a so-called modern martial arts school where they try to follow what the students want to train.
Mm.
They change over time because, okay, we change to this now. People want to do heavy bag training. Then we put in some heavy bags. So I think that we should be able to try new things, but we have to stick to the road. And that's why people come into my dojo, because they know what I'm stand for. They know what training they're going to get, not in details, of course, because we change things. But I also do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a parallel art to make my Jiu-Jitsu better, not to leave the arts that I had before.
Mm-hmm. So I got a question here. Sensei Suino, I'm going to start with you. Just cuz. So in the old school, you know, Hanshi Legacy and Sensei Wall and Sensei Suino, you guys started in the 60s and 70s. And so many of the tales from that time are blood and guts, are super hard, are your nose is over here, you move it back over, you keep fighting. And there wasn't really anybody your current age walking around with a 10th Dan, right? So the students basically got the teacher's like 20, 30 something ethos. Now, as our instructor base ages and finds more peace with it, is there a chance that some new students aren't getting enough of that thing because so many of the teachers are in a more peaceful, gratitude-based place and they don't have that 30-year-old master go and do it like this? Is that ethos gone?
Well, it's not completely gone. There's still tough dojos, and there's
Right.
still people going into MMA and UFC, right? There's still people doing, you know, hardcore martial arts in a lot of places. So I don't think you can say it's gone. Um, maybe what you're asking is there a perfect ratio? I don't really
Maybe.
know, right? I don't really know. You know, you've heard me say many times, you got to pressure test your martial art, whatever it is, right? You can't only drill and BJJ. Sometimes you got to roll with people that are trying to beat you, right? You can't only do kata. Kata's wonderful, but sometimes you got to spar, right? In judo, you got to do randori, free practice. Otherwise, your techniques are just academic. And I still believe martial arts is for everybody. And so if somebody doesn't want to go to a tournament, but they still are willing to train hard in a dojo, that's fine. But that does mean there's probably a ceiling to how hard they're being pushed and how hard they're pushing themselves, right?
Right.
Whereas if they're going to step into a tournament, whether that be karate, judo, BJJ, anything else, they're taking the risk, psychological and physical risk, that somebody is going to fight harder than their normal training partners,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I would say there has to be pressure. I don't know if there has to be hard ass
Right.
instructors. Yeah.
Yeah. Hanshi Legacy, I want to phrase this a slightly different way for you. When you
No.
were a teacher in your 30s and you were running a school, now you're older and you're running a school. As you've mellowed, does that mean Shorin-ryu has mellowed under your guidance?
My daughter said to me last Christmas, she says, "Dad, you've really mellowed out. It's your age, you know, it's your age." At the very beginning, like I mentioned before, all we knew in 1970, all we knew were the physical part of martial arts. Right? We had Richard Kim around, but he was sort of older and never saw him throw a punch in my life. And so I think that over the years, when we got to train and we got uh, the entire classical art, and then we got all the knowledge, like I said before, from the masters, we're in the right way, in the real way of doing things. So, you know, it's sort of like if I'm going to the store, I can run hard or I can just walk there. Right. So I just think with knowledge comes power. And and you also mellow. You also, because you don't have to be mean to show your prowess. You just have to be smart. Like I said, Randy will testify to this. Knowledge is power. I take a smart guy and train him before I take a tough guy. Because a tough guy may not last. He wouldn't have that mental strength. And that's what the art gives you.
Thanks, Hanchi. I'm glad I asked that. Sensei, I'll phrase it just a little different for you, Sensei Dauphin. You know, you talk about even when I was training with you in the park, you were a different kind of teacher. I'm so grateful for that. I'm glad I got that guy, but I don't think anyone would argue you're a better teacher now. But has that mellowing mellowed your club's art at all?
I just want to say, I don't think any of these people have mellowed. And I'm not even joking when I say that. What I mean when I say that is when you're younger, it's the light switch is switched on all the time. Like you walk around with the switch on all the time. As you get older, you just know that you don't need to have the light switch on all the time because you can flick the switch so fast. And if you don't believe me, I can take you into Sensei Legacy or Sensei Suino's dojos, and I can take them from 0 to killer in 2 seconds. I can make a couple of simple actions, and those old people that you're thinking are now not there anymore because they're they won't be that. Within 1 second, I'll have them back to, I know exactly the things to do as a student that will bring them back to being not the switched off sensei that's relaxed. They're both looking at me because they know I'm right. They know that they can flick that switch back on and they will. There's no doubt that they will. I've seen Sensei Legacy do it maybe recently. But I mean, for me, Sensei Legacy, I remember once him telling me that my cross body blocks were not good, not powerful enough, and I was like, okay. And I like, whatever, I did something like 0.5% different. And then like the next second I knew he was standing in front of me as he was counting and we're doing cross body blocks and he's crossing forearms with me. And I'm like, okay, you better get your arms moving, boy, because your arms are going to get broke in a second if you don't. Right. I think that still exists.
Yeah.
I hope it still exists. And I think, again, it just goes back to the relationship for me. Right. The one thing I do want to say that since Suino said something, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm not trying to take this topic in a different direction, but I don't think a lot of UFC fighters are martial artists. I think they're fighters. And I hold a distinct difference in my brain between a fighter and a martial artist. A fighter is trying to achieve a goal in the ring. They have to do certain things. They have to experience certain things before they go in that ring. A martial artist is on a path of excellence through a system over a long amount of time and can experience those things in a scaled way,
Right.
and then pass them on in a scaled way to other people. I think that's my opinion. That's obviously, I didn't read that in a Wikipedia or anything.
Right. Thanks, Sensei. Before we go to Sensei Wall, I just want to blend a bit. Like, I think you're right. Like when I was younger, my switch was always on, but it wasn't even a good switch. It was just always on. And, you know, with knowledge comes the ability to be way more intense without even being intense, effective. So, you know, answering my own question, even though I am the youngest guy in the call, but not by much. Yeah, I'm happier with the mellower version. Sensei, while I didn't know you younger, I'm assuming you've mellowed. You can tell me I'm wrong, but do you think your style underneath you has mellowed, maybe even in how it's physically executed, as you have?
Well, mellow, I don't know, but we change. You know, it's. I think some people talk about my cooking before here during the show, and it can look the same, but it can taste differently. You know, it's for me. I'm trying to be a better version of myself every day. That's my personal goal in life. I have been a teacher in school for 25 years, and my students, they are staying with me for 3 years, and then they continue to the university after that. So I know it's only 3 years, and then I leave for something else. But student in dojo you can have for 3 years, 30 years, maybe longer. And so they come back for a reason, but they choose your dojo for a reason. And the reason can be that, well, I would like to do karate. Maybe they don't know what karate is. And I talked to you the last time I was on the show. When I started martial arts in 1977, I didn't know what I should start. I just went into a school and say, hey, what are you doing here? And I have staying there since. But I think that my point of picking this topic was that if I looking back of how I teach, not me as a person, but as a style or as a club, we have modern equipment now that we can use, and that don't have to be a bad thing. So if I should help my instructors to get better, we can use, for example, the iPad, and I can tape them when they do the things. And there is a special software called Coach Eye where you can easily go back and forth, and you can put in instructional letters, or you can stop the movie wherever you like, and you can send it to someone else that can have a second opinion. And when I had guys that should be preparing for the MMA fights back for a couple of years ago, I have another instructor sitting in another city, but he was with me on link, like we are talking now. So he followed the training in my school to support. So I think we couldn't do that back in the 1970s because we didn't have the possibility to do it. So that's why I meant with I can change the way of taking my students from one point to another by using maybe a better way of teaching, or a better way of taking care of injuries, or a better way of doing certain things without leaving my path.
So a question I have for you then that goes back to a bit of what you're talking about, as well as something you said earlier, Sensei Wall, where you said that, you know, in the 70s, you tell your teacher you're doing another art, they kick you out. And now they might encourage the concurrent path. What was the shift? When was the shift? Why? Why did teachers start to go, that's actually good for you?
Well, if you look back to your own martial art history in Canada, I think there is some waves going over the world like this. When after the Bruce Lee movies, there was a lot of kung fu schools open up. We had the Taekwondo boom, and then we have the BJJ boom, and we have the MMA boom. But there is still some traditional arts that are still there. I think it's when my students come to me and ask me if they can go and practice some other arts, I always say, well, it's up to you, of course. If you would like to do it, do it. It's better that they ask than you find out behind your back that they have gone to the worst opponent ever, you know, and stay there. But it's up to me to deliver. So they want to stay with me, because you can't nail them to the floor, or maybe you can do it, but so I think the changement come within different arts. I think it come on different times. I think if you are doing Shotokan karate, the instructor don't want you to go to another karate school. But it's okay to try out judo or jiu-jitsu, because you're playing another instrument, you know. It's so here I think it was more allowed to try other arts when you go from 1990 over to the 2000. I think there's of course, if you have an open-minded instructor, he help you to try something else. And we have met on Capital Conquest or similar big events, where the whole idea is that we go from one mat and doing things. And I was participate with a bunch of my instructors at one of the largest jiu-jitsu camps in Sweden last year. It's and I was training, of course, but there was a lot of other guys coming up to me and say, well, hello, Sensei, you're an 8-dan black belt. Are you training? And I said, yeah, of course I'm training. So I think we have to understand that our student can find new clip on YouTube in a second. We couldn't do that back in the days, because then we have the magazines. We can read, you know, the Black Belt magazine. I have a bunch of them still. So everything changes around us. And the main question is, do we have to change with the society, or we should stay in our own world? But we have to be aware of that there is other competitors these days that I have to take in the consideration. And the students I have in the school, they have to focus on homework. They have to focus on to be good students in the school. So some of them are so stressed about that, so they don't have the time to go to dojo. And I tell them, you better go to dojo anyhow, or go to the gym, or go out running, because you need that to refill, you know. So we have to change. And can we take that in, like we are becoming a father role model, you know? I don't have that relationship with my old sensei anymore, but a lot of my students have that relationship with me. And when I hear you talk about each other with that great respect, that is what it's all about for me.
Thank you, Sensei. Sensei Dauphin, I know you have a thought on this.
You asked that question. One thing that I've seen that has changed quite a bit, and Sensei Wall talked about it, and even back in the day, to my knowledge, people were fiercely competitive with each other because they were competing a lot. Like, they showed up at tournaments to fight against each other, and my club's better than your club because, and it seems like when those senseis, Sensei Legacy being one of them, and the other senseis kind of moved away from that, things became more collegial. Like, people that you didn't want to see in a tournament, you became friends with. Like, and I know Sensei Legacy has people that he competed with like fiercely, and they probably wouldn't have talked to each other in the 70s much. But today, like, if that person called Sensei Legacy and said, Sensei, I'm sick, or I'm in trouble right now, he'd get in his car and drive and go see them right away. So again, maybe that's a maturing thing, but I think a lot of that competitiveness has gone away, especially when you recognize another good martial artist.
Right.
Of course, none of us like the shit ones, right? I don't, and I don't associate with them or fly with them. But in my city, James and Adet are two of my best friends, and they run thriving martial arts schools here. The seminar that we're going to teach next weekend, James has a bigger dojo than me, and he said, why don't you use my dojo, because you'll be able to get more students into it, right? So, and the other thing I wanted to say about your lines of, you're very good at it, Sean. You've never gone and trained with somebody or in an art without coming to me and saying, hey, Sensei, I've never done that with Sensei Legacy. He's never found out about me training with somebody or doing something. Hey, and listen, sometimes I've gone to Sensei Legacy and said, I want to go train with this particular person. And he's like, I wouldn't. Like, and I'm like, I really want to though, Sensei. And he's like, okay, you can. I'm just telling you. And then when I go and I come back, he's like, well, what did you think? And I'm like, I probably shouldn't have. You were right. Like, I shouldn't have trained with that person. Right. So it's not that your sensei should be putting barriers up. They should be guiding you. And I have Sensei Legacy guides all of my martial arts, all of it. He doesn't do BJJ, but he guides that too. He guides all of it.
And on that note, I'll throw it to you, Hanshi Legacy. I remember messaging you in 2003 and Sensei Dauphin the same email and saying, there's this guy, Hidetaka Nishiyama, he's got a club near me, and you just said, he's a legend and a master, go train with him. And that was somebody in a similar martial art. So what would you say was the shift, Hanshi Legacy? When do you think in martial arts teachers started to be like, it's fine, with the trust that you're still their student?
Well, at the beginning, everybody's trying to get a foothold back in, say, 1970, 71. Everybody's trying to build martial arts. Nobody understood it. It was a fight for getting students so you could keep your school open. And then we started to realize that the fighting wasn't doing anybody any good. That if the students are the ones who are going to choose the schools, not us, make them, right? So I think, like Randy said, it's if we get stimulate the whole city to know that there are martial arts there, they'll make the choice. But then there'll be more out there to choose that will come to your dojo. So I think that's what being a nicer place to go and train is better than being like a warring place with other martial arts schools. It's just a different attitude nowadays than back then. It's because we understand it more that at the first we were just street level, not really well-trained fighters, and we were all thinking about the didn't realize that if you became a good martial artist and renowned in some sense, that you will get more students in that way. People will recommend you, even other dojos, that if, say, a jiu-jitsu dojo finds out that you want to do karate, they will look for that person to send them to. So I think we all just got wiser.
Thanks, Hanshi. Before I go to you, Sensei Suino, I just want to say I really agree with what you said, Sensei Wall. I think once we got YouTube, I think nobody could pretend anymore. I think you couldn't say something was something when there's video of it either working or not working. I think people could go, yeah, I don't buy that. Aside from demos, but pressure tested, things got revealed pretty quick. And people had to get humble, I think, and go, okay, well, this is good for this, but might lack this. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Sensei Suino, what about you? When did you feel a shift, or maybe it was always an open vibe for you?
I have a maybe a unique experience. I trained in martial arts for 20 years in the US, and then I moved to Japan and trained for 4+ years there. And when I came back, it was different. But you know what? I don't have an accurate view of how it changed for the world. It changed for me because I was at one dojo most of the time in America. When I went to Japan, I went to a certain dojo, but I had authorization to go to another one. And then I was training at events where there were lots of different instructors. And I got lucky, I guess, and I did really well in certain places. So, when I came back, I was sort of a mixed martial artist. Not that I was doing MMA fights, but I had certifications in judo and jujitsu, iaido, kyudo. And so my perspective was completely different. And there was no way to lock me back down, if you know what I mean. So then I was already seeing the world differently. I was already experimenting. And by then it was too late for my teachers in this country to say, oh, no, you got to go back to that, right? Come into our dojo and stay there. And I think, so I don't have an accurate picture of, for me, it changed between 1988 and 1992. It probably changed kind of for the world starting around that time too, but that's just my perspective based on my unique experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and before we go back to Sensei Wall with his next idea about the history in the countries, I just want to say that Sensei Suino, that idea of you coming back having blown something open has directly benefited all us, because obviously Hanshi Legacy saw the value in your iaido, and I would argue we can directly trace our ground and grappling interests in your direction. You fostered those, so that thing that blew open for you blew open for us in many ways.
Well, that's a blessing, and for all of us, and it was a blessing for me because I learned how to be an adult and how to be a man in Japan. So I came back a different human being.
Love that. Sensei Wall, I know you wanted to talk not just about how our training's changed, but also just how the histories of the country match up and how that can affect change.
Yeah. Everybody knows that back in 1993, the Ultimate Fighting Championships were put together, and over a night, the whole situation would change. And we can't turn back time. So we all have to accept and adapt, So I think that there is a lot of old sports still around. The boxing is still around, but it attracts a lot of students still. Thai boxing, by the way, it's attract more people because just by the name, they don't have to do any advertisement. They just say, well, this is Thai boxing, and there is a bunch of guys going over because the name itself, if I look back, I start with self-defense jiu-jitsu. We didn't have tournaments. A lot of you guys talk about that you're competing first and then you find the inner aspects of your art. But from my perspective, we couldn't compete in self-defense jiu-jitsu. And my instructor told me over and over, well, we don't compete, Mike, because we are a better person. We don't fight. Over the years, so that's why I start with different arts, because I would like to see if I was up to it, if I can take a punch, or could I take a kick, or when I start with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the same thing. So I think that you have the same situation in Canada that we have in Sweden. The different arts are coming on different times. Some are still around and some are hot. And if I put the question back to you, which is the hottest art in Canada right now?
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd say BJJ has the largest clubs.
The largest clubs, okay. Because we had a discussion yesterday, if that is a measurement of success, if I have 300 students or I have 30 students, or I have 30 students that have been with me for 30 years. Is that another way of looking at it? But sometimes we need to have students because we have bills to pay. So some of us maybe change our package because we need to know that, I have to fill this class with 40 as a new students because the bills are coming in next week. So I have to, but in my opinion, the old way where you have one teacher and one student, that is maybe the best way to develop that person. But we also build friendship with others in a group. But the group can't be too big because then we lose that. So that's a matter of balance. So when I teach students that come with some kind of mental disabilities, I have to keep the group smaller, maybe only 3, 4, 5 students, because in other case they are doing like this. They can't manage to train if it's too crowded. In some other forms, when we do the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, we would like to have the Brazilian feeling, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and we can be 200 people going on, and it doesn't change what we deliver. So I think that we have to be able to do it on an individual level in a group. I think it was Randy that says that also, and so for me, it's the other arts that are coming and going. We just have to deal with that. There is a boom now in Sweden, a judo boom, because we have a very successful girl that's competing at the Olympics and took the first medal ever for Sweden there. And every kid now would like to go to judo school.
That's silly.
And before she was so hot, no one would like to go to judo school. So I think it's going like this, and we have to follow, and we have to be honest and say, okay, I still doing my art, but maybe I do it a little bit different because I change. That's just an input.
Sensei Nova, did you want to chip in there?
I said going to a judo school is silly.
Well,
That's good. That's good. That's a good art.
So within the ballpark of this Sensei Wall, you know, you are a jiu-jitsu man, so obviously it's something you enjoy, BJJ. But do you think the boom of it is possibly leading to maybe not the attention people need, or as you said, do you think that that's a sport and an art that can bear the numbers?
Some can and some can't. You know, it's if you go to a holiday with your family, if I just make a little detour here, and your family is 7-person, and you have a car that you can sit comfortably with 4-person, the trip are not going to be so comfortable. You know, you have to change your vehicle so it fits your families. I think that the question was with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's one of the fastest growing arts in Sweden. I think it's the same all over the world, to be honest. But we have 7 Taekwondo schools in my town. We only have 3 that do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. 2 of them are good, and in my opinion, because they deliver. So I think that if you have a dojo that can take care of 25 students, don't take in 75 because just of the money, because you have to be the thing that you give to your students is something that you can't take back. You know, if you have tell them one thing, that this is the truth, this is the way to do a hip throw, and you have to understand that they can check you out, like we talk about. You know, so I think that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are going to grow, but then it's come to another platform. Maybe there is something new coming. I don't know, but the format of putting together tournaments are changing, and the format of, for example, if I look back 10 years ago, the biggest style in Sweden in the Budo and Martial Arts Federation, that was the karate styles. But then it changed. Then there were the mixed martial arts clubs. They were growing faster, attract more students, but it tends to go more in and out. You know, the karate people stays longer. And of course, it's also a matter of, can you compete? Why do you come to a mixed martial arts school if you don't have a thought of maybe compete one day? You know, so I think that some schools are good on taking care of your students over time, and some schools are good to fill the classes, and they don't care if you stay 1 year or 2 years because there is new students coming. And for me, it's more important to have 30 students for 30 years than 300 students for 3 months, you know, but that's me.
Well, I really love the way you said that thing about just, if you've got a club for 25, don't put in 50, or the car. I think it's a perfect analogy. You know, if you know, for example, my BJJ school is really busy, but they've got a number of instructors, a number of different classes, and as of now, it works. But let me throw this one to you, Sensei Dauphin. This isn't as much about BJJ per se, but the fact that BJJ is the sport of the day. And Sensei Wall said another one will probably come. Do you think that some new martial art, I mean, Hanshi Legacy's seen the turn of the wheel, and we'll go to him next, but do you think that sustains as number one, or do you think in 10 years somebody does a capoeira win of something and all of a sudden capoeira is filling up? Like, what do you think if you're guessing?
There's always going to be something new coming. But I mean, when you say that though, like, humans are different, but not physically.
Right.
They still have 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, and so the new thing that comes is still going to be something that involves 2 arms, 2 legs, your head, moving yourself around. At least as far as I can think. I think though that the one thing I like about BJJ that I would say that they, if other styles started to do this more, and it happens, I know at JMAC, and it also happens in Legacy Shorinru, and it always has happened in Legacy Shorinru, is I think, and I'd be interested in Sensei Wall's opinion on this, a big room of people, and I agree, Sensei Wall, with everything you said. If your dojo can support 25 and you have 75, you're making a mistake. I also agree with you that, you know, my 20 black belts, Sean's been with me for a long, those ones, I'd rather, if everything else crumbled away, I know I'd still be with them, and that's more important to me to keep the art moving forward. The thing that I think BJJ has, Legacy Shorinru has, JMAC has, is a lot of physical contact.
Right.
And I think when that builds a connection with people that's different than talking. That's different than, it's totally different. Like, Sensei Legacy jokes around and says, you know, when him and I fought, like, pieces of our DNA is underneath our fingernails, right? It's true. That does bond you in a different way. And maybe some people won't be bonded to me per se in a big dojo. It's important that they get bonded to somebody that's ahead of them in a big dojo, that they have somebody of skill and quality that they're bonded to in a mental way, but also in a physical way, right? And BJJ, that's where do they capitalize? You fight every class. Like, you fight every class. You're rolling around with somebody every class. And it's funny when I think about it, the people I like the most at my BJJ club are the people I fight with the most.
Yep.
And I can't beat all of them. Some of them crush me into the ground, but I still love those people. I love, because I think we know each other on a different level. And that's where I think BJJ is winning over clubs that do theoretical martial arts where people stand in line nonstop, never touching another human being. Those martial arts and schools are doomed, I think. At least not to be big, not to be super big or long lived.
Well, you want to ask Sensei Wall. Sensei Wall, do you agree with that? I think that's a really great perspective, and I'm curious if you share it.
Yeah, of course I do. You know, it's but there is also two ways of doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've back in Sweden here before, it called grappling because it wasn't that organized, you know. But when you have a gi on, and so you can have something to hold on to, that is what most people think is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the floor game, the ground game. But they also have self-defense system, and they have stand-up and kicking and punching. But most of the schools that are open up and do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we do the groundwork most of the time. And that is the identification card, you know, we sparring, we rolling. But now there is a question of doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with gi or no gi. So when I do a special program out in the suburban areas with the government, the kids are not, they don't have the money to buy a gi. So maybe we do the no gi concept. It's more like boxing, sorry, as a wrestling. And you have something called Canadian wrestling, lutte. I don't know what that is, but maybe you know. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes is the main goal for some schools are the sparring part. For some schools, it's still to teach techniques. And when you grade people in traditional Jiu-Jitsu, maybe you do a grading hour or 2 or 3 or 4 hours of grading. And in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, most of the time, the instructor say, hey, John, it's time now for your first stripe, and you go up and everybody, you don't have to do the grading test. So that is what's changing over time. There is some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school that is only teach the gi concept because they don't want to attract the wrong students. And take me wrong here, you know, it's if you go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes because you would like to develop your ground game to compete in mixed martial arts, that's one road of the Brazilian road. If you would like to go to learn a new art that is with the gi, where you hold your opponent and you go for the arm bars, the knee bars, the footlocks, to develop your skills in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think that is different. And that's why we have to accept that people are choosing to go to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class for different reasons. I think it's absolutely fantastic to have 70-year-old woman or man to go and roll, because we don't hit each other. There is no punching, no kicking. It's more secure. It's more safe. At the same time, you can build some 70-year-old monster in a gi also, because they think it's fine. And it's fun to roll and grapple. And so I think everybody here have a point on that you can practice whatever you like, but you have to consideration that, just like you said, Randy, we have two arms, you have two legs, we have a body in between. We can't change it. If we don't make love to an alien, maybe we have four legs, but I don't know. It's and our body is changing, but I can be so grateful because I have been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for many, many years. And when I compete, I always compete with guys that are 20 years younger than me. So I have to respect that, because a body that is 20 years old, weighing 80 kilo, is a different body than a guy like me that turned 63 in a couple of months. But we can still spar. And if I can survive the first minute, they have a problem. So because we can control it in a different way. So I don't want to say that the major difference is that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu have the sparring part in a more secure way than most of the other arts when we spar. So I think that is the clue, actually. But then I think it's going to peak out, because the quality, when we look at tournaments, Norway is going they have a lot of good fighters, like Tommy Langarker, for example. Sweden have a lot of good fighters now. We didn't win any tournament back in the 1990s, 2000. Now they are coming, because there is a whole new generation. Because we do crossover training, but we start with one art. But now when the kids are starting with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when they are 2 years old or 4 years old or 5 years old, and they stick to the art, of course they're going to be much, much better than when we start. So yeah, I think that every art has something to offer. And I also have been doing karate for a lot of years, but I don't grade too much in that. But I love the way that every art have the significant identification card.
So one thing I want to ask, because we're talking about how, in Sweden and Canada, arts have changed. We're talking about how our training has changed, but I'll start with you, Sensei Wall. How do you see your training changing over the next while? I mean, this is sort of one of our 10 questions, but generally speaking, when you look in the future, what do you picture for the changes to come? Or even what would you like them to be?
We have to accept that our students don't want to do it all. And I mean that it's more easy for me, if I would like to attract girls to my school, it's more easy if we do boxing classes standing up than sweating down on the floor. That's one part of it, but of course we have girls going for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But if you do the self-defense Jiu-Jitsu, most of time we are talking about the attacker. If someone attack you this way, this is some way that you can defend yourself. So self-defense aspect, I think, is still going to be there, because it's that's the root. As like as Gary told us before, that back in the days we were fighting, and we can be friends with the guys that we fought before, but Here it is self-defense aspects or sports aspects. And in my school, it's more important with the self-defense aspects because we don't compete in traditional jiu-jitsu. We can compete in kata with a sword or with a bow, or we can compete in Brazilian jiu-jitsu because there is a rule system. I think that what's going to change, person are going to change some way. And now there is a discussion in some countries that the students or the kids shouldn't be able to have the cellular phone so much. They shouldn't be able to go to internet so much because it consumes so many hours of their lives. So some put in some regulations now that the kids under a certain age are not allowed to be on internet more than 1 hour a day, or so we have to fill that gap with something. So I think that martial arts with good role models have a possibility to change the next generation of students, because they still go to school and the stress is going up, and it's hard to get a job in some countries. It's hard to get a financial platform when you are young, because the job are not, it's hard to get a job in certain areas. When I was young, I can get a job anywhere because there was other kind of jobs that we can take, you know. Now everybody needs an education. They need to go in school for a longer period of time. So I think that they need this environment that we can provide them with, and different parallel world with good role models, when they can, where young boys are, it's fine that we can provide them with an area where they can be fighters also. In school, they throw them out if they fight because here is the area. Come in here. Well, you don't have to sit still here. You can run around and you can do things because we form them to a better person. I think that is very important.
Thank you, Sensei. Let's go to you, Sensei Dauphin. Like, what do you picture being the upcoming changes in your training?
I'm just gonna keep doing the stuff I'm doing. Like I love the stuff I'm doing. Yeah, I like teaching kids again. I'll tell you that. Like I went through a phase where I was away from kids. I love teaching the kids now. They're so much fun. They're so honest. They're also very resilient, and they're not as delicate as some of the adults are that come in. The adult students who come in, you can't be as direct with some of the adults where you can with the kids. I find I can be very direct with them, and they're just like, oh, that's just my old cranky sensei. He loves me, but and he's just trying to get the best out of me. But you know, basically, Sean, like I'm gonna do my basics every class. I'll do my 10 reverse punches, my 10 kicks, my 10 until the day that I can only do 9. And then I'm gonna do 9 as long as I possibly can until I can only do 8. And that's the path that I'm on right now at this point.
Right on. Before I go to Sensei Suino, I just want to say for me, it's a door I've walked through pretty recently, and I want to expand on is just making everything more playful, you know, like losing intention and just playing in the space. And it feels really good right now, whether I'm stand up or on the ground. And so I don't know what 10 years from now will look like, but I know in the short term, the recently my training has changed to something that's, hey, I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back the day after that. So let's play with this and see where the gaps are right now in either space or my games. So I'm super excited for that. The playful nature lets me get excited to go back and train more, not less. Sensei Suino, what about you? What do you think some changes might be as you enter the foothills of senility? Sorry, I stole it from you.
Yeah, you can steal it. I'm still in the foothills of senility, I hope. But if I say something crazy, it's because I'm well into the foothills. What is going to change? You know, I recognize that some physical limitations are coming up, um, but I can still get better at martial arts, and it's cool. And I think all of us can agree on this call. Isn't it amazing that after 30 years, 35 years, 40 years of training, you can still go to the dojo and work hard on something and be better at it than when you came in, right? In an hour or 2 hours or a week. It's that's like one of the great privileges of being able to train now is to be able to go in and make a commitment to do something better and then actually have it happen. So now you got that stacked on your 30 or 40 or 50 years experience. Um, and you know, that's been happening in all my martial arts lately. Uh, and and Sean, I like what you said, to be playful. It kind of connects with what I said at the beginning, to be physically and mentally in balance in the moment and thoroughly analyze a technique or a move or an interaction between two people instantaneously because you've built that skill set. You built the ability to see and feel what's going on. Uh, Freaking cool, man. I want to do that as long as I can.
Love that. Hanshi Legacy, what about you? How do you see changes in your training?
I just keep training, just uh, get better at Iaido at this time. Right now, I'm doing it for myself because I'm almost 80, so I just want something to clear my mind and keep me centered. But a couple of other things I'd like to say that I never got to before was wrestling. The word lutte, Lute, is wrestling in French.
Ah,
Okay. Okay. In Sweden, it's growing in a lot of different ways, including their hockey team. They have a very good hockey team all the time. Yeah. And the other thing is about, I'm going back a little bit because I never got to comment on other things, was MMA got to sort of point the finger at martial arts that works when put in a practical or on a street level. You know, I'm not going to say anything about different styles, but you just check the backgrounds of those, most of the fighters, and you'll see what martial arts they take because they really work on a ground level. And if you're a good teacher and you develop a good school, it gets around. I have a really small story. I know we don't have much time, but I'm going to go as fast as I can. One of my students, his name is Caitlin McGregor, and this guy came along. I think young guys just try to impress girls, but he said he took Muay Thai, and that his Muay Thai could take our karate at any time. I'm not going to mention the places so that because it's just kids talking. And I said, well, tell him that he can come to our dojo and show us how good he is at his Muay Thai. So she told him that. And then 2 weeks to a month went by. And she goes, hey, Sensei, that guy came back to me and he said that he asked his Sensei if he should come to your dojo and show him how good his Muay Thai is. And his Sensei says, well, who is her teacher? She said, Gary Legacy. He said he just looked at him and said, don't do it. So what I'm saying there is, if you do your martial arts and you move your martial arts into the future and pay good attention to it and train hard at it, that the word will get out and your dojo will gain in that way too. It's not all about talking about it, or it's actually doing the art. That's the end of my story.
Well, Hanshi, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second to say thank you to Robert Schlumsky, Justin Shea, Andrei Sadashev, Alden Adair, Josh Kitchens, Cristiano Landolt, Dridi Giuliani, Stavros Stavroulias, and Emily Ruth Driscoll, who run the behind the scenes of Punch, Kick, Choke Chat. Go hit that subscribe, that like, share with your friends. And Hanshi, we're back to you to say goodbye on Around the Horn, and we'll end with you, Sensei Wall.
Good to see you again, Sensei Wall. You had a lot of good things to say. Yes, and I love running into you in Ottawa. Hopefully we can do it again this year. All right. And if you ever come to Canada and you're around our place, let us know.
Thank you so much.
Sensei Sweeney, what do you want to say to our guest this evening?
Sensei Wall, you get the Rockstar Award for staying up this late. That was amazing. If I stay up this late, I will stay even stupider things than I have tonight. Thank you so much for coming, man. I can't wait to get together again and do some training. I don't know when that's going to happen, but let's do it.
Thank you.
Sensei Dauphin?
I love this chat. I didn't write down all the copious notes because it was more conversation tonight. But I do want to say, Sensei Wall, I agree with like spot on the things you were saying, size of dojo, evolution of training, how it was before, how it is now. It's been a really insightful conversation and something for me to ponder. There's a lot of things that I'm going to watch this one again because there's a lot of things I want to think on a little bit deeper that you said to both see, am I doing it and should I be doing it, which I think I probably should. So I also want to mention before we go that Sensei Copeland chimed in for you, Sensei Wall, and said about the kids. He said, kids are the future. Teach them respect, compassion, gratitude. It's the cornerstone to help form them, and a good, hard, fun, sweaty karate class. So he's on your side, and he agrees with you. And we don't often disagree with Sensei Copeland. So I'm going to agree with him too. And nice to see you. I can't wait to see you again. Like I said, we've become friends, and I know we're doing this on Zoom, but I'm really confident we're going to see each other and train multiple times through our lifetime. And I'm really happy and excited about that.
Thank you, Sensei Dauphin. Sensei, well, I just want to say how much I love chatting with you, and I love this topic. This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately in terms of just the arc of my teacher's journey, but also mine as I'm entering my 33rd year. I'm 32 years now, and I'm feeling that nice middle ground of it. And so talking about the changes in training, big picture, but mine, it's a real cool topic. And I could do this for 4 more hours just on this topic, riffing out little stories and stuff. So we truly have run out of time, but how do you want to say goodnight to us and wind this up for us?
Well, I'm soon going to work, so it's going to be nice. Well, I can't think of any better way of spending my nighttime. So it's I love to sit and talk to you guys as well, and all the respect to all of you. And so I'm hope that I'm see you again now during the 2025 somewhere around. I follow this show very much, and you have done a great job. So I hope that we together can create a better way for the next coming 10 years.
We will.
Thank you, Sensei. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Next week we got a short. The week after we're back. Very excited for all of this in 2025. Happy New Year, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sensei Wall.
Good night.